Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are really strapping in, I think, to look at something huge. These powerful factors that often get overlooked when we talk about understanding spoken English.
Yeah, things beyond just grammar rules or vocab lists.
Exactly. We're talking about your emotional state, your stress levels, and where your attention is actually going, your focus.
It's like we're moving away from the textbook stuff for a bit.
Right, and diving deep into the cognitive battlefield, you could say. What's happening inside your head? Okay, let's paint a picture. I think a lot of you listening will recognize this one. Maybe painfully so. Imagine you walk into a super busy American coffee shop. You know, downtown Seattle, maybe Chicago.
The noise.
Total chaos,
Yeah.
right? The hiss of the espresso machine, people talking loudly, that background roar. And you finally get to the front and the barista just fires off this super fast question. Something about cream, sugar, maybe some special drink.
And it all sounds like one long word.
Exactly. One long, garbled, impossible mess. You kind of stammer, maybe ask them to repeat it, and you just walk away feeling, well, pretty defeated.
Been there, definitely.
Okay, now hold that feeling. Contrast it with, say, being at home. Maybe you're listening to an online lecture, something you're actually into, or a really good interview.
Quiet environment, you're relaxed.
Yeah. And the topic might be just as complex, maybe even more advanced vocabulary, but you're absorbed, right? You're following along. The information just flows.
You catch the chunks, the examples, the tone, everything.
So why? Why this massive difference in understanding when your actual English skills haven't magically changed between the morning coffee run and the evening lecture?
Well, that's the fascinating part, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what our research, our sources really point to is that it's rarely just about your vocabulary level or the speaker's accent.
It's something else.
It's the huge immediate impact of stress and focus. You know, when we talk about getting better at listening, we have to go beyond the usual techniques, like chunk listening or spotting examples. Those are important, sure, but we need to explore this critical mental landscape.
Okay.
So our mission today really is to give you a kind of shortcut to managing that internal world. Think of it like this. Stress. That's the loud, horrible static on your radio. Makes it really hard to hear the actual music, the speech.
Just noise, garbled noise.
Yeah, but focus. Focus is like a spotlight, a really powerful one. It cuts through the noise and lights up exactly what you need to hear and process. Total clarity.
So we need to turn down the static and sharpen the beam.
That's the goal. Minimize the static, maximize the spotlight, both at the same time.
All right, let's unpack that metaphor. You said the brain is like a sophisticated supercomputer. That makes sense. But stress acts like a virus. How does that work? What's actually happening inside our heads, physiologically, cognitively, when that old fight or flight response gets triggered by, say, just trying to order that coffee?
Yeah, it's a great question because, see, the system is working perfectly. But it's working perfectly for survival, not for understanding complex grammar, right?
Okay.
That fight or flight thing is ancient wiring. It immediately starts diverting your body's resources, sends blood to your muscles for running or fighting, not to the complex parts of your brain needed for language.
So it's like prioritizing escape over eloquence.
Pretty much. And this kicks off a really severe cognitive cascade, a chain reaction that actively works against your listening accuracy.
Okay, what's the first hit?
The first and probably the most immediate effect is narrowed attention. People often call it tunnel vision, but it happens with hearing too. Sensory tunnel vision.
Tunnel hearing.
Kinda, yeah. Because your brain thinks there's a threat, it drastically filters everything coming in. It only pays attention to what might signal immediate danger.
So in a conversation.
In conversation, that means you stop listening for the whole sentence, the grammar, the nuance. You just start desperately scanning for keywords.
Ah, okay. So instead of hearing the whole phrase, can I get a name for that order? Nice and clear.
Right. Your stressed brain just latches onto maybe name and order, and it tries to guess the rest based on those fragments. You miss all the little connecting words, the verb tenses, the stuff that actually gives it precise meaning.
Why is just grabbing keywords so bad? I mean, sometimes you can figure it out, right?
Sometimes, maybe. But you lose so much. You miss implied meanings, subtle requests, the how and the why. You're just getting fragments. And fragments, well, they can't support real deep comprehension, especially when things get complicated.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this problem gets way worse because of the second major hit, reduced working memory capacity.
The mental workbench idea we've talked about before.
Exactly that. It's where you hold information temporarily while your brain works on it, right? Connects to what came before, prepares for what's next. Crucial
for understanding sentences.
Totally crucial. But under stress, that workbench dramatically shrinks. It's like your mental countertop just got tiny.
So you can't hold on to things long enough.
Nope. You lose that ability to bridge the gap. You can't hold the beginning of a long, complex sentence, maybe the setup to a detailed financial question, while you're waiting for the end part, the bit with the actual verb or the main point.
The information just falls off the bench.
Pretty much. The information comes in, it gets sort of contaminated by the stress hormones, and then poof, it's gone before your brain can really process it, make sense of it, connect it.
Wow, that sounds absolutely crippling if you're trying to follow, say, a fast-paced discussion or a complex argument, especially in English if it's not your first language, because the processing load is already higher, isn't it?
It really is. And our sources point to a third problem that might be even more damaging for actually participating in a conversation: impaired executive function.
Executive function, that's the brain's CEO, right?
Yeah.
Planning, decision-making.
Exactly. It covers all those high-level skills, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. Things like planning what you're going to say, updating information as the conversation flows. And this is key inhibition.
Inhibition, like stopping yourself from saying the wrong thing.
Partly, but more like inhibiting distractions, filtering out irrelevant stuff. When you're stressed, your ability to inhibit, to filter, just collapses.
So everything gets through.
Everything. The noise of the coffee machine, the uncomfortable feeling in your shoulders, that loud inner voice screaming, "You're totally messing this up." All that irrelevant stuff floods your system.
And uses up brain power.
Exactly. It consumes the very cognitive energy you desperately need for the hard work of parsing grammar, understanding intent, and making sense of what the speaker actually means. You basically lose your mental filter. The static, internal and external, just takes over.
Okay, so the brain's fighting these distractions.
Yeah.
And the stress response itself is demanding, right? That's the fourth point you mentioned, the increased cognitive load. It's not free to be stressed.
Not at all. Stress itself is a huge burden, metabolically and cognitively. It's like your brain is suddenly forced to run dozens of really demanding background apps all at the same time.
Draining the battery.
Precisely. So let's say processing English normally takes maybe 80% of your available cognitive capacity on a good day. Now add the stress response demanding another, say, 30%. You're suddenly trying to operate at 110% capacity. System overload, trash. Exactly. The system just overflows, freezes up. There simply aren't enough resources left for the really demanding tasks. Figuring out tricky grammar, pulling vocabulary quickly from memory, putting together a sensible reply.
And we can't forget the physical stuff feeding into this loop, can we? The racing heart, the shallow breathing, muscles getting tense.
Oh, absolutely. Those physical sensations are like alarm bells screaming, "Danger!"
Yeah.
And that pulls your attention away from the subtle things you need to hear the speaker's tone, the rhythm, the little pauses, which leads to that slower processing speed. You just fall behind.
So this whole cascade, it leads to very specific listening failures.
Directly. You get difficulty with sound discrimination. Fast connecting speech like, "Where are you from?" becomes "Where from?" And it's just opaque, a blur.
Right.
You suffer reduced retention. Information vanishes from that shrinking workbench almost instantly.
Can't remember what was just said.
Exactly. And you get significant misinterpretation. You miss idioms, sarcasm, jokes, social cues, because you just don't have the mental bandwidth to process anything deeper than the most basic literal meaning of the words, if you even catch those.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. Let's bring this down to earth with that example you mentioned, Lead Way in San Francisco. This really highlights the high-stakes side of it.
Yeah, picture this. Leak Way. He's ambitious, maybe founded a tech startup. He's in this super sleek, modern, maybe minimalist office tower in downtown San Francisco.
High pressure environment.
Totally. He's pitching to venture capitalists,
Right.
VCs. The room is quiet, almost too quiet, except for these sharp analytical questions from the investors. You can feel the tension. His company's future's on the line. Max stress level already.
He's holding it together, though, mostly, until the money question comes up.
Right. One of the VCs leans forward, speaks pretty quickly, maybe blending their words a bit, and asks, "Can you elaborate on the burn rate projections for the first 18 months, specifically in relation to your projected customer acquisition costs?"
Oof, that's dense. Lots of key terms packed in there.
Super dense. Elaborate on burn rate projections first 18 months, specifically in relation to projected customer acquisition costs.
Now, Leeway probably knows all those business terms individually. He's prepared.
Yeah, absolutely does. He studied them. But it's the combination of the speed, the density, and that crucial connecting phrase "in relation to" that triggers the stress spike. The virus hits.
And his working memory.
Instantly overloaded, shrinks right down. He hears the key words, burn rate, 18 months, acquisition costs. He grabs those.
But misses the connection.
Exactly. The cognitive resources needed to hold those fragments while also processing the complex instruction elaborate on in relation to. They're just not there. The stress ate them up. He completely misses the core request, which is about comparing the two things.
So instead of giving that comparison,
He gives a general answer. Just talks broadly about overall expenses for 18 months. It's related, but it's not what they asked. It's not precise.
wow, so he didn't fail because he didn't know the words. He failed because the stress literally broke his brain's ability to process the relationship between the words. It crippled his precision.
That's it, exactly. And that kind of functional misunderstanding, missing the core of the request, is often way more damaging in a real-world situation than just missing one vocabulary word.
Okay, so if Lei Wei's story shows us stress is the static, the noise that just wrecks precision, then focus is the flip side. It's a laser beam, you said, cutting through all that noise.
That's the idea. Focus isn't just passive. It's the deliberate strategic direction of those limited cognitive resources right onto the task at hand, understanding the language.
So let's flip the coin. What does the brain look like when it's operating at its best? When focus is strong? What are the mechanics, the benefits, that directly counteract all that damage stress does?
Right. When you're genuinely focused, when you've managed to quiet down that internal static, the first thing you get is enhanced auditory discrimination.
So you hear sounds better.
Much better. Your brain is receptive now, not defensive. It becomes really attuned to subtle differences in sounds, the rise and fall of intonation, the rhythm of the speech. This is what lets you successfully pull apart that fast-connected speech, even if the room isn't perfectly quiet.
Okay, makes sense. What's next?
Second, you get that expanded working memory. Remember how stress shrinks the workbench? Well, focus, combined with lower stress, lets it expand back out. It becomes large and stable again.
So you can hold more information for longer.
Exactly. You can handle those long, complex sentences. You can connect ideas across multiple phrases or even sentences. You can actually track the steps in an argument over time.
That directly tackles Lin Wei's problem then. If his working memory had been larger, he could have held burn rate and acquisition costs and processed in relation to all at once.
Absolutely. Focus gives you that crucial mental space, that temporal capacity to bridge the start of a complex thought to its end. You grasp the whole intricate idea, not just bits and pieces.
And this leads to faster processing overall.
Yes, efficient information processing. Your brain gets much faster at its job. It parses grammar more quickly. It pulls vocabulary from your long-term memory almost instantly. Everything just runs smoother, faster, because the processing channel is clear and dedicated purely to making meaning in real time.
No background static hogging the resources.
None, which leads to maybe the most powerful benefit, especially when you're dealing with complex topics or new information: schema activation.
Schema activation. Remind us what that is again.
Think of your long-term memory like a huge, well-organized library. Schema activation's like pulling out all the relevant books before the lecture even starts. If you know the topic is, say, venture capital, like in Lei Wei's case, a focused brain automatically pre-activates related concepts. Seed funding, valuation, due diligence, exit strategy. All that background knowledge gets brought to the front of your mind.
And why is that such a game changer for listening speed?
Because when the speaker then says a word like due diligence, your brain doesn't have to stop and define it from scratch. It instantly connects the word to the concept you've already activated. Boom. It drastically cuts down the real-time processing load, especially for jargon or complex terms.
So focus helps the brain predict, anticipate, fill in gaps, making the whole process less effortful in the moment.
Exactly. It primes the pump. And all of this better sound discrimination, bigger working memory, faster processing, schema activation leads to the ultimate goal: improved retention.
You actually remember what you heard.
Correct. Information that you process with deliberate, focused attention gets encoded deeply into your long-term memory. It doesn't just sit temporarily on the workbench and then vanish. It becomes durable, usable knowledge.
So the payoff for focus is huge. Clearer sound recognition, faster processing, understanding nuance, and actually remembering it later.
That sums it up perfectly.
And we have a great counterexample to Lei Wei's stress-induced failure. The story of Sarah. She's experiencing peak focus down in La Jolla, California.
Yeah, Sarah's a fantastic example of the laser beam effect. She's a graduate student, maybe marine biology, and she's at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, world-renowned place.
Attending a specialized lecture? Sounds demanding.
It is academically demanding, sure. But her mental state is perfectly tuned. The lectures on deep-sea hydrothermal vents, a topic she's genuinely fascinated by. And here's the key. She did her homework, she reviewed her notes, maybe read a related paper beforehand.
So she came prepared and interested. That combination seems crucial.
It really is. So picture the scene, maybe a classic lecture hall, slightly tiered seats, perhaps that faint smell of salt air and old books.
But Sarah's not noticing that stuff.
Not really. Her focus is absolute. That prep work she did, it allows for instant, highly effective schema activation. The moment the oceanographer mentions something like chemosynthetic organisms or extreme environments, her brain doesn't stumble. Click. It connects instantly to her existing knowledge. No lag time.
And her working memory.
It's wide open. It easily holds these long, complex, descriptive phrases the scientist is using like unique ecosystems independent of solar energy. She processes that whole chunk as one complete idea, integrating the tricky vocabulary and the scientific context effortlessly. The jargon isn't a barrier because her attention is so sharp.
Okay, that's impressive. But the source mentioned something even more subtle she picked up on, a tonal shift.
Yes. This is where you see real mastery enabled by focus. The oceanographer is describing the science, very objective. Then they shift slightly when they start talking about the potential threat from deep-sea mining, maybe a slight change in pace, a different inflection, a tiny pause.
And Sarah catches that.
She does. And she correctly interprets that subtle shift, not just as information, but as an implied call for conservation. She's reading the subtext, the speaker's underlying emotional stance and persuasive intent.
Wow. So she wasn't just decoding words, she was understanding the whole communication, the data, the concepts, the structure, and the unspoken message.
Exactly. Sarah's success story perfectly illustrates how optimal focus lets you weave everything together: vocabulary, complex ideas, sentence structure, even emotional tone, leading to really profound and accurate comprehension. It's the complete opposite of Li Mei's fragmented experience.
Okay, so focus is clearly the ideal state we're aiming for, but it's not quite as simple as stress bad, focus good, is it? You mentioned we need some level of pressure, some arousal, just to pay attention at all.
That's the crucial nuance, absolutely. It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
If you had literally zero stress, zero arousal, you'd probably just fall asleep in the middle of the conversation.
Right. Not helpful either.
Which brings us to this really important psychological principle, the Yerkes-Dodson law. It's been around for over a century, but it perfectly describes this relationship. Basically, it says the performance, in our case, listening accuracy, increases as your physiological or mental arousal, your stress level, goes up, but only up to a certain point.
An optimal point.
Exactly, an optimal peak. After you cross that peak, even a tiny bit more stress, more arousal, leads to a rapid collapse in performance. Your accuracy just plummets.
Okay, so let's break down the curve. What are the zones of listening performance based on this law?
Okay, zone 1 is too little stress. This is basically boredom, or maybe being too relaxed, disengaged.
Like listening to something really monotonous or way too easy.
Precisely. Or maybe you're just completely uninterested. What happens? Your focus drifts. You start daydreaming, thinking about lunch, whatever. Your cognitive filters get sloppy, and your listening accuracy drops because you're simply not engaged enough. You're zoning out.
We've all been there in a boring meeting. Okay, zone 2.
Zone 2 is the sweet spot, the peak of the curve. This is optimal stress, or what we call alert engagement.
This is the target zone.
This is absolutely where you want to be. It's a moderate level of arousal. Think about that slight nervousness you feel before giving a presentation you care about, or the focused energy when you're tackling a problem that's challenging but interesting, or just a healthy sense of anticipation.
Not panic, but definitely not sleepy.
Right. This moderate level actually sharpens your senses. It helps your brain allocate resources effectively. It keeps you alert and responsive without triggering that full-blown panic response we saw with Lu Fei. Focus is maximized here. Learning is maximized here.
Okay. And then there's the other side of the peak, zone 3.
Zone 3 is the danger zone. Too much stress. This is overwhelm, panic. This is when the arousal level crosses that critical threshold on the Yerkes-Dodson curve.
And performance crashes.
crashes hard, the fight or flight system hijacks everything, cognitive resources get diverted away from the thinking brain, working memory shrinks drastically, inhibitory control is gone, and the result is that rapid, sometimes instant decline in focus and really severe listening problems. The signal gets completely drowned out by the static.
But driving instructor story you mentioned seems like a perfect way to see these three zones in action in a really practical, everyday U.S. situation.
It really illustrates it well. Okay, picture a student driver. First scenario. They're on a completely deserted, straight country road. Nothing's happening. The instructor is calmly explaining basic stuff, like checking tire pressure, in a steady, maybe slightly monotonous voice.
What's the student doing?
The student's bored, understimulated. Their mind starts wandering, what should I have for dinner tonight? Listening accuracy, low. They're hearing the words maybe, but not really processing. That's zone 1. Too little stress.
Okay, scene 2. They turn onto a city street. Moderately busy.
Right, now there's traffic, pedestrians, signals. The instructor says calmly, but with focus, okay, signal left now, check your mirrors, watch for that person stepping off the curb, now ease into the lane.
What's the student feeling?
They feel a bit of pressure, right? A healthy alert, nervousness, heart rate is up a little, senses are sharp, focus is totally on the task. They follow the instructions accurately. That's zone 2. Optimal stress, alert engagement, the pressure is helping them perform better.
Okay, perfect sweet spot, but then chaos.
Then suddenly a taxi cuts them off aggressively, horns blare. The instructor shouts, brake, brake. The student slams on the brakes, maybe grips the wheel super tight, knuckles white, stress spikes through the roof.
Panic sets in, zone 3.
Instantly. Now, the instructor might try to give calm, detailed advice like, okay, check your rear view, signal, pull over safely when clear. But the student system is completely overloaded. Adrenaline is flooding their brain. Working memory is shot. Inhibitory control is gone.
They can't process complex instructions anymore.
Not at all. They might only hear fragmented, alarming bits like stop or watch out. The ability to actually listen to, understand, and follow the detailed advice, completely gone. That's the catastrophic failure of zone 3. Too much stress.
That's a fantastic illustration, and it highlights something really important for English learners, doesn't it? Situations that might be low or optimal stress for a native speaker, like ordering coffee or asking for directions, can suddenly become high-stress zone 3 triggers for a learner.
Exactly. Everyday interactions in the U.S. can become these unexpected sources of intense stress, pushing learners right over that optimal Yerkes-Dodson peak and directly crippling their listening accuracy.
And our source material actually details 5 really common challenges, these specific stressors that learners often face in the American context.
Yeah, let's break those down. The first one is often purely internal, but it's incredibly powerful and destructive. 1, fear of making mistakes, sounding dumb.
The pressure to be perfect.
Totally. It's that intense internal pressure to speak flawlessly, respond instantly, never misunderstand. The fear that if you pause too long or ask for clarification or use the wrong word, people will judge you negatively. That internal critic is loud.
And just worrying about that takes up brain space, right?
Huge amounts of cognitive resources. Just the fear itself acts as a massive stressor. Think about that story of the student on the university campus in Austin, Texas.
Right, trying to join a casual chat.
Yeah, they're finally feeling brave enough to jump into this fast-paced discussion with American friends. They're tense, waiting for an opening. This is someone casually throws out an idiom like, yeah, we should just spill the beans about the project.
An idiom the student doesn't know.
Right. And instantly, the fear hits. Not just confusion, but fear. What does spill the beans mean? If I ask, will they think I'm stupid? What if I misuse it later? That internal panic spiral is so intense, it generates massive stress.
And what happens?
They freeze. They completely lose the thread of the conversation. While they're stuck worrying about beans, the discussion moves on. The stress caused by that one phrase effectively knocks them out of the loop for the next 5 minutes.
Wow. Okay, that's powerful. What's the second common stressor?
The second one is about the sound itself. 2, accent anxiety, speed, overwhelm. The U.S. is incredibly diverse linguistically. You've got countless regional accents, different paces of speech, varying intonation patterns. Encountering an unfamiliar one, especially under pressure, is a huge stress trigger.
Like trying to understand someone speaking really fast with a thick accent you've never heard before.
Exactly. Consider the example of the new immigrant working in a call center, maybe down in Florida. They might be comfortable with standard, clear American English they learned. But then they get callers with really strong regional accents, maybe a deep southern drawl, or someone from Boston dropping their R's and speaking super quickly.
That must be exhausting.
It's incredibly taxing. The constant mental effort required to adjust their auditory processing on the fly for each new unfamiliar accent, combined with the pressure to actually solve the customer's problem quickly, it leads to chronic stress, auditory fatigue, plus performance pressure.
Resulting in
Frequent, sometimes critical, misunderstandings, missing key details, getting names wrong, misunderstanding the actual issue, even with basic information. That constant strain just keeps their cognitive load perpetually high, leaving very little room for accurate comprehension.
Okay, that makes sense. The sheer effort of decoding the sound leaves nothing left for the meaning. What's number 3?
Number 3 is about the content itself. 3, information overload density of content. This happens a lot in professional or academic settings. You're just bombarded with too much new information too quickly.
Like drinking from a fire hose.
Exactly. The classic example is that mandatory corporate town hall meeting, maybe in a huge auditorium in New York City.
Yeah.
The CEO is up there rattling off quarterly earnings, complex market strategies, future plans.
Using tons of jargon.
Tons. Leveraging synergies, Q3 EBITDA results, scaling the pivot, optimizing throughput, all packed into long, complex sentences delivered at speed. For a non-native speaker, even one with good business English, it's just an overwhelming cognitive assault, a sensory bombardment.
So the brain just shuts down.
Pretty much, the stress level spikes so high from the sheer density and speed that the brain essentially refuses to even try to parse it all. It's like, nope, too much. The result is near zero retention. You walk out remembering almost nothing. The system got flooded before processing could even begin.
Okay, that's a tough one. Number 4 gets into the social side, right?
Yeah, number 4 is for cultural nuances, implied meaning. This is about missing the stuff that's not explicitly said. Unspoken rules, sarcasm, irony, indirect communication styles. Missing these cues is a huge source of social stress and anxiety.
Because you feel like you're not quite fitting in or you've misunderstood the situation.
Exactly. Imagine being at a casual dinner party, maybe in Los Angeles, where communication can sometimes be quite indirect. Someone tries a dish that's maybe way too spicy, and they say, with this really exaggerated, maybe slightly pained expression, oh, this is just fantastic.
Clearly meaning the opposite, sarcasm.
Right. But if you, as the learner, take that literally because you missed the tone or the facial cue, you might chime in, oh, great, I'm so glad you like it.
Awkward.
Super awkward. And while one instance isn't the end of the world, if this kind of subtle social misstep happens repeatedly, it creates this pervasive background stress, this constant nagging feeling, did I get that right? Did I miss something important again? And that worry, that stress about social connection, actively steals cognitive resources you need for processing the next thing someone says.
It's like a background anxiety program running all the time.
Exactly. And finally, number 5, which ties a lot of this together. 5, time pressure for response. Many American contexts, especially professional ones, value quick thinking and rapid verbal exchange. There's often an expectation to process information and formulate a response very quickly.
No time to pause and think.
Very little, sometimes. Picture a fast-paced brainstorming session at a tech startup in Seattle. Ideas are flying back and forth, people are building on each other's points rapidly. This unspoken pressure to jump in, contribute something relevant and articulate without taking a long, noticeable pause.
That sounds incredibly stressful if you're trying to formulate a sentence in a second language.
It's immense pressure. The need to quickly process each new, complex idea and simultaneously formulate your own grammatically correct, relevant contribution in English and deliver it smoothly. It's a massive cognitive load under time pressure.
So what happens?
Often, the listener gets pushed out of the flow. They end up spending all their mental energy trying to craft the perfect sentence to respond to the point someone made 2 minutes ago, completely missing the current point being discussed. The time pressure paralyzes their ability to participate in real time.
Recognizing these 5 fear of mistakes, accent speed, info overload, cultural nuance, and time pressure seems really key. Knowing the enemy, so to speak.
Absolutely, because once you can identify what is triggering the stress in a specific U.S. context, you can start deploying targeted strategies to manage it and keep yourself in that optimal learning zone.
Okay, so we know stress is the enemy, the static, and we know focus is the goal, the laser beam. If stress attacks our resources, then focus is about actively training ourselves to direct those resources where we need them. Now that we understand the problem, let's get practical. What are the concrete strategies, the tools to actually sharpen that focus?
Right, focus isn't just something that happens. It's a skill you can build. Strategy number 1 is all about laying the groundwork before the listening even starts. 1. Preparation is power. Pre-listening rituals.
So, doing your homework, basically, how does preparing beforehand actually reduce the mental strain during the listening itself?
It's all about activating your schema, that background knowledge we talked about. The strategy is, if you know the topic of the meeting, the lecture, the conversation, take 5 or 10 minutes beforehand. Review related vocabulary. Remind yourself of key concepts or people involved. Look up the company profile.
You're priming the brain.
Exactly. Because you've already brought that relevant information to the front of your mind, your brain doesn't have to scramble to build the context from scratch, while it's also trying to decode the incoming language under pressure. It dramatically lowers the real-time cognitive load. Processing becomes much more efficient because the foundation is already there.
Okay, that makes sense. Like the sales professional preparing for that important video call with a client in Boston, they don't just click the link unprepared.
No way. A smart salesperson spends maybe 15-20 minutes beforehand. They review the client's industry trends, check the company's latest news, maybe refresh their memory on the specific person they're meeting from LinkedIn.
How does that translate into better listening during the call?
It acts like a filter. When the Boston client starts talking, the prepared salesperson isn't just listening passively for anything. They are actively listening for specific things, keywords related to the client's needs, potential pain points they uncovered in their research, openings related to their product. Their focus is directed. It helps them zero in on the most relevant chunks of language and ignore less important details. It's intentional, targeted listening.
Got it. Preparation directs the laser beam. Okay, strategy 2.
Strategy 2 is about managing your internal state in the moment. 2, mindfulness and presence, the here and now.
Mindfulness. That sounds a bit abstract. How does being present help you understand English better?
It's actually very practical. The strategy is simple, though not always easy. Practice being fully here. Anchor yourself in the present moment. Simple techniques like taking a few deep breaths or quickly noticing the physical sensation of your feet on the floor can pull you back from distraction.
Distraction like your mind wandering off.
Exactly, because our minds do wander, right? To worrying about the past, planning the future, judging ourselves. The key is, when you notice your mind has drifted off, and you will notice gently, without judgment, just guide it back to the sound of the speaker's voice, back to the input.
How does that mental discipline help with the cognitive noise we talked about?
Mindfulness directly tackles that internal clutter. Remember how internal distractions, worry, planning, self-criticism are huge drains on your working memory. Practicing presence helps you quiet that chatter. It strengthens your ability to sustain attention on the speaker and makes you more receptive to the actual auditory information instead of wasting resources on those competing thoughts inside your own head.
I like the example of the student in Denver. Just before leading a potentially stressful class discussion in English, they do something really simple.
Yeah, they just pause. Take 3 slow, deliberate, deep breaths. Maybe they quickly check if their shoulders are tense and consciously relax them.
A small ritual.
But powerful. It acts as a mental reset button. It helps quiet that pre-discussion anxiety and allows them to enter the conversation feeling calmer, more centered, more present. They're ready to actually listen to their classmates and respond thoughtfully rather than being hijacked by their own internal interference. They're consciously choosing alert engagement instead of spiraling into panic.
Okay, presence matters. Strategy 3 moves us from just receiving information to interacting with it, right? 3, active listening techniques. Engage and confirm.
Yes, this is crucial. You have to shift from being a passive sponge, just trying to soak everything up, to being an active participant in the meeting-making process.
How do you do that?
Primarily through 2 things. Asking clarifying questions and paraphrasing. And clarifying questions aren't just, what does that word mean? But also, so if I understand correctly, you're suggesting we should, or could you say a bit more about why that's important?
And paraphrasing, saying it back in your own words.
Exactly. Briefly summarizing what you think the speaker just said. Okay, so the main takeaway here is X, right? Or, let me see if I've got this. You need the report by Friday, focusing on Y and Z.
Why is that so effective for focus and accuracy?
Because it forces your brain to process the information deeply enough to rephrase it. You can't paraphrase accurately if you haven't really understood. It acts as an immediate comprehension check. Did I get it right? It reinforces your focus, because you know you might need to summarize, and it prevents misunderstandings from snowballing. Plus, it signals to the speaker that you're really engaged, which can sometimes even encourage them to be clearer or slow down a bit.
Like the employee in the Chicago office who regularly checks in with their manager after getting instructions.
Right. They don't just nod and walk away hoping they caught it all. They'll say something like, okay, just to confirm, the new deadline for the marketing brief is Friday at 3 p.m., and the main audience we're targeting is Gen Z in the Southeast region. Is that correct?
That's a cognitive check for both sides.
Precisely. It ensures absolute clarity, demonstrates focused listening, and proactively cuts off the kind of misunderstandings that are almost inevitable if you're just passively absorbing information, especially when stressed.
Okay, active engagement is key. Strategy 4 is about managing the external world. 4, eliminate distractions. Create your listening bubble.
This one's more about controlling your environment, both physical and digital. It means being intentional about reducing competing noise.
So noise-canceling headphones, turning off notifications.
Yes, absolutely. If you're in a situation where you can control the environment, do it. Noise-canceling headphones are fantastic. Turn off email pop-ups, phone notifications, close unnecessary tabs on your computer. If internal thoughts keep intruding, sometimes quickly jotting them down on a piece of paper to deal with later can help get them out of your head for the moment.
Why is minimizing these seemingly small distractions so vital?
Because every single interruption, every little ping or visual distraction steals a slice of your cognitive resources. It pulls on the same limited working memory capacity that you need for processing the language. Creating a deliberate listening bubble minimizes these competing stimuli, allowing you to dedicate more of your brain power purely to understanding the speaker.
Think about the student trying to focus on an important online lecture while living in a noisy college dorm.
They can't just hope for the best. They need to be proactive. So they put on good noise-canceling headphones, they close their laptop lid slightly, or minimize other windows to avoid visual clutter. Maybe they even put a Do Not Disturb sign on their door for that hour.
They're consciously building a fortress around their focus.
Exactly. They're maximizing their control over the environment to channel every available cognitive resource towards that lecture content. That kind of deliberate isolation can significantly boost their ability to absorb complex information accurately.
Makes sense. And the final focus strategy, number 5, is about having a clear purpose. 5, set clear listening goals. The target approach.
Yes. Before you even start listening, whether it's pressing play on a podcast, walking into a meeting, or joining a conversation, take a moment to define why you are listening. What is your specific target?
What kind of targets?
It could be anything. My goal is to find the main argument. I need to identify 3 key action items from this meeting. I'm listening specifically for examples that support the speaker's claim. I want to understand the speaker's emotional tone on this issue.
How does having a specific goal help focus?
It gives your brain a clear mission. It directs the laser beam. Instead of just diffusely trying to catch everything, which often results in catching nothing well, your brain becomes a highly effective filter. It actively seeks out the information relevant to your goal and pays less attention to the rest. It makes your listening purposeful and intentional rather than reactive and scattered.
So if you're watching that complex documentary about jazz history in New Orleans,
you don't just sit back passively. You give yourself a mission beforehand. Maybe? Okay, my goal is to nail down the main difference they describe between Dixieland jazz and bebop and A&E. I need to identify 3 musicians from the 1940s they highlight.
That focused goal changes how you listen.
Completely. You listen with heightened acuity for those specific pieces of information. It helps you cut through the density of the content and extract the key knowledge you decided you needed. It turns passive viewing into active learning. Okay, so we've talked about sharpening the focus, the laser beam, but that's only half the battle, right?
Yeah.
We also have to actively work on managing the stress itself, calming the static. These techniques are maybe less about direct language processing, but they're foundational. They protect and preserve those vital cognitive resources that focus relies on.
Right. If your brain is freaking out, it doesn't matter how hard you try to focus. So where do we start with calming the mind?
Let's start with the most immediate, accessible tool, something you can use anytime, anywhere. 1, deep breathing and relaxation, the instant calmer.
Deep breathing. It sounds almost too simple. How does just breathing slowly actually help combat that intense stress response we talked about?
It's simple, but it's profoundly physiological. The strategy is slow, rhythmic, deep breaths. Focus on breathing in slowly through your nose, letting your belly expand, not just your chest. Hold it just for a second or 2. And then exhale slowly and completely through your mouth.
The physical act itself changes brain chemistry.
It does. Slow, deep breathing directly activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the body's rest and digest system. It's the natural counterbalance to the sympathetic nervous system's fight or flight response.
So it's like hitting the brakes on the panic system.
Exactly. Slowing your breath sends a signal to your brain. Okay, the danger is past, you can calm down now. This lowers your heart rate, relaxes muscle tension, and crucially, it frees up cognitive resources that were being consumed by the anxiety response. It allows your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, language processing part of your brain, to come back online.
This seems perfect for those moments of sudden stress, like standing in line at the DMV in California you mentioned. It's noisy, bureaucratic, potentially confusing.
Right. You feel the stress building. So before you even step up to the counter, or maybe while waiting, you consciously take 3 of those slow, deep breaths. Inhale, hold, exhale slowly.
A quick physiological reset.
It is. It provides just enough calm, just enough mental space, so that when the clerk starts rattling off instructions, maybe quickly or with an accent, you're not already in panic mode. You're calm enough, focused enough to actually hear and process what they're saying accurately.
Okay, deep breathing for immediate calm. Strategy 2 tackles the thoughts inside our heads. 2. Positive self-talk and reframing, challenging the inner critic.
This is all about managing that internal monologue, especially the negative, critical voice that often pipes up when we're stressed or feel vulnerable.
The voice saying, "You're going to fail," or "You sound stupid."
Exactly that voice. The strategy is to consciously catch those negative thoughts and replace them with more realistic, encouraging, or simply neutral ones. Instead of, "I'll never understand this accent," try, "Okay, this accent is challenging, but I can ask for clarification if I need to." Or replace, "I'm going to make a mistake," with, "It's okay if I make a mistake. That's how I learn."
It's about changing the internal narrative. Why is this so important for listening?
Because that inner critic is a massive source of stress and anxiety. And anxiety, as we've established, is a cognitive load. It eats up brain power. By practicing positive self-talk and, crucially, reframing mistakes, seeing them not as proof of failure, but as valuable learning opportunities, you significantly reduce that internal anxiety.
Less anxiety means more brain power for listening.
Precisely. If your brain isn't wasting energy fighting off negative self-judgments, it has more capacity available to focus on understanding the speaker.
The example of the Texas barbecue, missing the joke, instead of beating yourself up.
Right. Instead of spiraling into, "Oh no, I looked foolish, everyone thinks I'm weird," you consciously reframe it. "Okay, that was a tricky joke. Interesting use of irony. Now I have a better sense of that person's humor style. Next time they tell a joke, I'll pay closer attention to their tone."
So you turn an awkward moment into data collection.
Exactly. That cognitive shift lowers the stress associated with that specific interaction and that person, making you feel less anxious and more prepared, more focused the next time they speak. You're building resilience by changing your interpretation.
Okay, reframing is powerful. Strategy 3 is about building confidence safely. 3, practice in low-stakes environments. Confidence incrementally.
This is key. Don't wait until you're in a super high-pressure, high-stakes situation, like a job interview or a critical presentation, to practice challenging listening skills. You need to build your confidence and skills gradually in situations where the consequences of misunderstanding are low or non-existent.
So practice where it doesn't matter as much.
Exactly. Start with casual conversations with friends who are patient and supportive. Listen to podcasts on topics you find easy or interesting. Watch TV shows you enjoy, maybe with English subtitles first, then try without.
How does practicing in easy situations help with hard ones?
It builds competence and comfort systematically. By mastering listening challenges in low-stakes settings, you reduce your overall anxiety about listening in English. That generalized fear of failure starts to diminish. So when you do eventually face a higher stakes situation, you approach it with a bit more confidence and a lower baseline stress level, making it less likely to trigger that overwhelming panic response.
The example of practicing ordering food makes sense here. Instead of trying your first solo order in a mad rush lunch hour.
Right, you practice first. Maybe you order from a drive-thru with a supportive friend in the passenger seat coaching you, or you role-play ordering different things with a study partner. Or you practice ordering coffee at a quiet cafe during off-peak hours.
You get familiar with the script, the flow, the likely questions in a safe space.
Exactly. You build familiarity and automaticity with the language and the interaction pattern in a low-pressure environment. So when the real high-stakes moment comes, it feels less daunting, less unfamiliar, less threatening. You've already done it successfully before.
Okay, low stakes practice first. Strategy 4 seems like the next logical step. 4, gradual exposure and incremental challenge. Desensitization.
Yeah, this builds directly on the previous point. It's like applying controlled exposure therapy, but for your listening skills. The idea is to deliberately and slowly increase the level of listening difficulty you expose yourself to.
So creating a personal training plan for your ears.
Kind of. You start with maybe clear, relatively slow speakers talking about familiar topics. Once that feels comfortable, you move to slightly faster speech. Then you introduce more complex or unfamiliar academic or professional topics. After that, you start intentionally listening to a wider variety of accents. And only then do you gradually move towards practicing in more demanding, real-time, potentially higher-pressure conversations.
Why is this gradual increase so important for managing stress?
Because it allows your brain to adapt and build resilience without getting overwhelmed and triggering that zone 3 panic response. Your brain gradually gets used to or desensitized to the stressors over time. What felt incredibly stressful last month, like understanding a fast news report, might feel manageable today because you've systematically built up the underlying cognitive skills and reduced the anxiety associated with that level of challenge. You're stretching your comfort zone bit by bit.
Like the student aiming for the debate club in Washington, D.C., they don't just jump into a high-level political argument on day one.
No, that would be overwhelming. They progress methodically. Maybe they start by watching simple YouTube videos explaining the core concepts of the debate topic. Then they graduate to watching recordings of actual university-level debates to get used to the speed and complexity. Then maybe they attend some public lectures on related issues. Then they join low-stakes practice debates within the club before finally participating in a formal competitive debate.
Each step builds on the last, preparing the brain.
Exactly. Each stage incrementally prepares their auditory processing and stress management systems for the next level of speed, complexity, and pressure. This maximizes their chances of staying focused and performing well when they reach the final, highest stakes situation.
Okay, and the final stress management strategy, number 5, goes back to basics. 5, physical activity and adequate sleep. Foundational well-being.
This one might sound unrelated to listening, but it's absolutely fundamental. It's about basic mental and physical hygiene, prioritizing regular physical activity and consistently getting enough quality sleep, usually 7-8 hours a night for most adults.
How does hitting the gym or getting enough sleep actually help you understand English better in a stressful moment?
It works indirectly, but powerfully. Regular exercise is proven to help regulate stress hormones like cortisol. Good quality sleep is absolutely essential for cognitive functions like memory consolidation, attention regulation, and emotional processing.
So it makes your brain healthier overall.
Yes, and more resilient. By taking care of your physical and mental well-being, you lower your baseline stress level. You improve your brain's cognitive flexibility, its ability to switch tasks and adapt. You enhance your working memory capacity. Essentially, you make your entire system more robust and better equipped to handle the sudden spikes of stress that inevitably come with navigating complex conversations in a non-native language, without immediately collapsing into that overwhelmed state. Think about the exchange student feeling constantly bombarded and stressed by English. They make a conscious choice. Okay, I need to prioritize a brisk walk around campus every day, and I need to make sure I get at least 7 hours of sleep no matter what.
They're investing in their brain's ability to cope.
They are. They're creating a more stable, better resourced, less chronically stressed internal environment. And it's within that stable environment that focused learning, including accurate listening comprehension, can actually take root and thrive consistently. It's about building a resilient foundation.
Okay, so we've explored the dark side, how stress sabotages listening, and the bright side, how focus supercharges it. We've got toolkits for both managing the stress and cultivating the focus. If we pull all these threads together now, what's the big picture? The ultimate takeaway for someone listening who wants to improve their comprehension.
I think the core takeaway is that stress and focus aren't separate issues. They are deeply intertwined, existing in this really powerful symbiotic relationship. And together, they directly control the effectiveness of your memory, which, at the end of the day, is what listening comprehension is all about, getting information successfully into your memory.
Okay, so spell that out. High stress equals...
When stress is high, your memory systems are fundamentally impaired. We've seen how working memory shrinks. You literally can't hold information long enough to process it or encode it. We see impaired schema activation. You struggle to access your own background knowledge efficiently, making everything feel new and harder. And the sensory input itself, The sound coming into your ears is so distorted by anxiety and filtered through that survival lens that it doesn't get converted properly into meaningful linguistic chunks in the first place.
So basic listening strategies we often talk about, like listening for chunks or identifying examples, they just don't work under high stress.
They really can't. Your brain doesn't have the stable working memory to hold a chunk, or the filtering capacity to isolate an example, or the clear processing needed to encode the information accurately. High stress makes those foundational techniques almost impossible to execute effectively. The student overwhelmed at the coffee shop probably couldn't even reliably remember exactly what they ended up ordering minutes later, let alone the nuances of the interaction.
Because the information never got properly encoded. It just hit the overloaded workbench and fell off.
Exactly. It never made it past that fragile, stressed-out working memory. But conversely, when focus is strong and stress is managed, your memory systems function beautifully.
How so?
Working memory expands, you have the mental space to hold complex ideas, schema activation becomes lightning fast, your brain efficiently retrieves relevant background knowledge, making comprehension quicker and easier, and the sensory input, the sound, is processed clearly and accurately, segmented into meaningful units.
And this is the state where those listening strategies can actually work.
This is precisely the condition needed. Strong focus creates the fertile ground where techniques like effective chunking, clearly identifying evidence or examples, understanding implied meaning, and achieving robust long-term memory encoding can actually happen and succeed.
So the message is, by actively managing your stress, using tools like deep breathing, positive self-talk, gradual exposure, and by actively cultivating your focus through preparation, mindfulness, active listening techniques, you're doing more than just tweaking one skill.
You're fundamentally creating the optimal mental environment, the ideal internal state for all your language learning strategies, especially listening ones, to actually work effectively and flourish. Mastery, in this sense, is just as much about mastering your internal landscape, winning that battle between the static and the laser beam, as it is about mastering the vocabulary and grammar of the language itself.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. The soundscape of American English, as you said, it is rich and complex, all the different speeds, accents, idioms, nuances.
It really is.
Yeah.
And your ability to navigate that complexity with confidence and accuracy is profoundly shaped by what's going on inside your own head. Learning to mitigate that internal static of stress while deliberately sharpening the beam of your focus. That's the real secret, I think, to transforming those frustrating moments of garbled confusion into consistent moments of clear, satisfying, effortless comprehension.
So we really want to encourage everyone listening, embrace these tools. Start paying attention to your own stress levels in listening situations. Identify your personal triggers. Is it speed, accents, fear of mistakes? And then practice these strategies. Start small. Be consistent.
Yeah, and watch what happens. Notice how over time that overwhelming static starts to fade. Notice how the speaker's voice becomes clearer, more distinct. You really can transform that internal noise into something comprehensible, allowing the full richness of spoken English to finally resonate clearly and accurately for you.
Absolutely. Okay, let's leave our listeners with a final thought, something to really connect these ideas to their own experience. Think back to a specific listening situation recently where you felt you struggled. Maybe it was that confusing coffee order or a difficult phone call or a fast part in a movie. Now, reflecting on the Yerkes-Dodson law, we discussed that performance curve. Where do you think your stress level was in that moment? Was it too little, bored and zoning out? Was it optimal, alert and engaged? Or was it too much, overwhelmed and panicked?
And then the crucial second step. Based on your answer, which single specific strategy that we talked about today, maybe taking those 3 deep breaths beforehand, or doing some pre-listening preparation on the topic, or maybe setting a clear listening goal, like just get the main idea, which one strategy could you realistically try next time you face a similar situation, specifically to help nudge yourself towards or keep yourself within that optimal alert engagement zone?
Just pick one to start with. Try it out. See what difference it makes. It might be more profound than you think.